Hello, welcome to Light in the Darkness. Psalm 119 verse 130 says, at the entrance of God's word, or at the opening of God's word, light comes forth. And here at Light in the Darkness, what we try to do is we use the word of God. We use the word of God and the wisdom that God has given us to open and shine light into areas in your life that may be darkened. And so a lot of times we're walking in uncertainty, we're walking in difficult times or in chaos, and we don't know what to do. But when God's word shines into a place in our lives, we are able to see, and we're able to understand, and we're able to navigate ourselves. So that's what we want to do here today. My name is Scott.
And my name is Jennifer. And welcome to our podcast. So we got something very special for you today. And we're going to be talking about relationships and its purpose. So Scott, let's talk about the relationships.
Let's talk about relationships, because everybody in this earth experiences relationships. We were created by God to be relational. We were created by, and the word relationships, or the word relate, means to connect.
Right.
It means to connect or to be joined with someone. So in relationships, what we're looking to do is to connect ourselves with someone, or to join ourselves with someone. Everybody in the earth, no matter who they are, no matter what their social economic status is, their educational background or whatever, everybody in this earth has value. They have significance and they have importance, because God created us for a purpose. And so with that being understood, it's through relationships that we are able to not only discover our value and significance to society, but we can develop them, and we can also exhibit them in a way that people can benefit from the true essence of who we are. There is something that you have that I can benefit from. There's something that I have that you can benefit from. When we look at each individual and we look at people and see them as valuable, as significant, and as important, then we don't demean or diminish people in life. It doesn't matter the color or race or anything else like that. Everybody carries value. So it's through communication and connecting, when we connect with one another, that we can get to understand that even in our uniqueness, there's still value that we can glean from each other.
All right. And you said that the most important word is that we connect to communicate, right? We communicate our ideas, our concept, our what we're trying to convey with each other, to each other, in order to have that relationship.
Sure.
So we have to find out what you are is all about and who you are in order to relate to you.
Yeah. And so, one of the things that we look at is that, people oftentimes don't understand the purpose and the function of relationships. And when you don't understand the purpose of a thing, the tendency is to misuse it or to abuse it or to not handle it functionally the way it's supposed to be done. So one of the things we want to shine on today is shine light in the dark area, so people can understand how a relationship works. Normally when people go into a relationship, whether they realize it or not, they're going to go into a relationship with an expectation.
Right.
They're going to expect to get something out of that relationship.
Right.
Because if you didn't, then you wouldn't go into it. You're either going to expect to get something out of it, or you're going to expect to put something into it. Either way, there is an expectation.
Right. And expectation is a key word. You're expecting something from the other person. So, let's just talk about the types of relationships that we have. And we know that relationship, as far as marriage is concerned, we have the marriage relationship, you have the family relationship, mother, father, sister, brother, those relationships. We want to kind of cover all of them and to see, what the purpose is for those relationships.
And there's the personal relationships that we have with, with people that are not our family. We have work relationships, we have other business relationships, and so the dynamics for the relationship all work no matter what. But as you said earlier, the covenant relationship or the marriage relationship is the highest of those. And of course, You know, a lot of times people have confusion with that, but there are a myriad of different types of relationship that we can look at that help people to understand how relationships work. And I think the first thing we have to recognize is, and to realize is that, you know, God, as I said earlier, God created us. He created us to be relational, and He created us to come together. And when He said in Genesis chapter 2 and verse 18, He said, "It's not good for the man to be alone." And then He said, "I will make a helper suitable for him." So when we connect, we want to connect with somebody that's suitable for us. So when we go into relationships, one of the things that communication does, it helps me to get to know and understand you.
Yes.
And it helps you to get to know and understand me, so if we can see if there is something there that we can connect on, so that there can be a mutual benefit. Because, you know, we're not going to always connect with everybody. But we can relate to people, but we're not going to always connect in a healthy relationship with everybody, because, of course, as you get to know people, you start realizing, well, hey, you know, they are going in a different direction than I am, or they have a different mindset or different attitude. And so relationships are vital and they're important, but it takes work, because you have to get to know the other person.
Yes, and that's the key. And getting to know the other person. And a lot of times people go in a relationship and they're expecting to get something out of the other person. But if they don't convey what their expectations are in that relationship, then their expectations can be unmet and go unmet. So it's important to you know, let the person, or talk about these things when you go into a relationship, before you start a relationship, to let them know what you're expecting out of it.
It's just like, you know, you're looking for a job. You're going looking for a job, and you're saying, hey, you know, the skill base or the things that you have to bring to the table, but you're looking for a job where you can match your skills to what their requirements are, what their expectations are on the job. And so you do the interview process because you said, I'm trying to find out something about the company, what they have to offer, but the company's trying to find out something about you so that they can see if there's a relationship connection there. Same way with any relationship. A lot of times we go into relationships and we end up getting our expectations go unmet, and we experience disappointment and hurt because we don't really understand, you know, the purpose of the relationship, or we don't understand what it is that we're trying to get. And when you go into a relationship and you don't know what your expectations are, or when you go into a relationship with unrealistic expectations, in other words, I'm expecting something from someone that they can't provide. Yes, I can get hurt, I can be disappointed, I can get frustrated, I can get angry, but we have to understand that every relationship, you're not going to get the same thing out of it as you would another relationship. That's the reason why we go to the bank for banking, we go to the grocery store for groceries, and we go to a doctor for medical attention, and a psychiatrist for mental, because each relationship provides something different. And until we get to know each other, especially in personal relationships, we can often overestimate the value of the relationship based on what we're looking to get out of it. And when we do that, yes, it can cause problems.
Yeah, that is a big thing too. So what are some of the things that you have seen in relationships, you know, throughout counseling, and that you've seen that, you know, come in your office that is a big thing, that a big issue between two people?
Well, I guess one of the major things that we see in our counseling sessions and in dealing with people is that, you know, because we're mostly dealing with personal relationships, of course, whether it's marriage or pre-married or family, things like that. And so we're dealing with personal relationships, and one of the things that we find out is people have an expectation, and the expectation in a present relationship, what they're looking to get, normally comes from situations or experiences that they had in past relationships. Whether they got something from that relationship or they didn't get what they expected. And so they'll go into a new relationship and expecting that. And one of the disconnections that we find in most relationships is the expectation of what, you know, personal feelings and emotions and something that's going to make me feel good in the relationship. So a lot of times couples come in there and they go into a relationship because they want the other person to make them happy. They want the person to make them complete and fulfilled. And that can cause a lot of problems because couples are going in there and saying, okay, you know, I may grew up in a family where I felt neglected, or I felt abandoned, or I felt unappreciated of that, and I want you then to try. I'm looking to you to validate me or to affirm me, so I can feel good about myself. And if that person doesn't do that for me, if I don't get that accomplished, then I can be disappointed in the relationship. But that person that I'm trying to get it from may be coming into the relationship with the same dynamics. They may be coming in looking to be valued or fulfilled from me. And if we don't understand that up front, then it can cause a lot of problems. So one of the biggest challenges is that, when we go into a relationship, we really don't get to the point where we get to know the person intimately, not only mental, emotional, but then there's the spiritual aspect of it also. So when you bring all of that to the table and you start really getting to know a person on all of those different levels, you can begin to understand that why it's so difficult to make relationships work, because the openness, and the key is we're being open and honest with each other in a relationship up front to say, hey, I'm not good at that, or that's something I'm working on, so that you don't expect me to provide that for you on the front end. It doesn't mean I can't get to that point. But I may not be there, just like you may not be there.
Right. Yeah. And, a lot of times, like you say, in relationships, you have to be open and honest. You have to be transparent in order to get to know that person. Because, you can see the challenge in a relationship, especially if they're not open and honest about who they are when they come to the play. Because I've experienced some of the challenges that, when I was out there dating and stuff, as they weren't forthcoming with you. But you can be the truthful person. You can be the one that's sharing everything openly and honestly, and they would come back and they're not truthful. So that is a challenge, especially when you find out that they were lying.
Yeah. And one of the things that promotes that is, unfortunately, is fear. People go in a relationship and they find somebody that they really want to be with, and then the fear says, "What if they know this about me, or if I unveil this, if I'm transparent, if I'm honest about this, then they may not want me," and they fear rejection or being disapproved. And so, oftentimes, the deception come about because they say, "I value the relationship so much that I don't want them to know that, hey, I grew up like this, or this is how I am right now." Because then they're going to think, well, if the person knows that about me, they're not going to want me. But eventually, it's going to be discovered anyway. So it's better to share it up front before you get into a relationship. And a key word is to give the person the right and the choice to choose whether they want to go into that relationship or not. But when we cover stuff up, and we don't be open and honest with one another, then we really take away a person's choice and decision in making a quality decision about their relationship, because they say, if I had known that, I would not have done this, or if I had known that, I would not have done that. And so fear can cause us to avoid being transparent, and we have to overcome the fear. And then the other part of it, that is when you're transparent with someone, you're going into a relationship with someone, even if they have some things that could be detrimental, it doesn't mean they can't be overcome. But when you understand what those things are, you can work together and overcome them and still make the relationship healthy and strong. But if a person finds out that they've been deceived, then distrust set in. And of course, distrust is going to lead to a whole lot of other things, and it just complicates the whole situation.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
So, that was a good, analogy of what, things would look like when, it's a challenge in it. Let's talk about, how important it is for them to cultivate this relationship. And to grow in this relationship. So that they can define what the purpose of the relationship is all about. So, and I'm going to lead off with this, Ecclesiastes 4, 9 through 10. It talks about two is better than one, for they have their reward.
A good reward for their labor.
They have a good reward for their labor. And it talks about if the one fall and it's alone, who's going to be there to pick them up? So it's better to have the two that is working together in agreement in that relationship. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, because see, that's the key to the relationship. The key to the relationship, and a lot of times we use Ecclesiastes 4:9 for marriage, but it's really not focusing on marriage as much as it's just refocusing on relationship, because it says, two are better than one. And that's the case because of what? Because one by himself can only accomplish so much.
Right.
But when you bring in the synergistic effects of two people coming together, then 1 + 1 can equal 4 or 5. In other words, you can get 2 or 3 times much accomplished when it's two of you all working as you can with one. And so God created us to connect so that we can realize and recognize that when we come together as one and we connect as a unit, then that unit is so powerful that it can accomplish so much more. And then when you add the 3 or the 4 or the 5, and you come in with a community, and the community goes into, a state and then a nation, the dynamics of that, the things and the possibilities are insurmountable. And so when we go into a relationship, the first thing we have to do is get to know ourselves. We have to know ourselves well enough to know what we're bringing to the table.
Right.
Because when I know what I'm bringing to the table, I can share that with you. And when you know what you're bringing to the table, you can share that with me. And then when you share what you're bringing to the table, and I share what I'm bringing to the table, we can look at that and go, okay, yeah, I think we can accomplish this particular goal, or this particular ambition, or this particular dream, or whatever it is that we're looking to accomplish. Because when people come into a relationship, and they come in there and they're getting to know and understand one another, and it's clearly understood up front what both people are going to provide, then it makes it easy. And so I like the example of the hammer and the nail. Using a hammer and a nail to build a house. The hammer and the nail have to work together to build that house. But when you look at it, you say, okay, which one is more important? Is it the hammer or is it the nail? Some people say, well, the hammer's more important because if it wasn't for the hammer, then the nail couldn't get in. But some people say, well, if the nail wasn't there, the hammer couldn't do his work.
Right.
And you find out what? That they are both equally important.
Yes, they are.
But they both bring something different. But when the two work together, they can build the house. And so that's what relationships are. It's you identifying who you are, I identify where I am, and then we can look at what we want to accomplish and say, yeah, we have what it takes to accomplish this. It causes us then to what? It causes us then to be interdependent upon each other. It's not that I'm dependent on you. I'm going to be who I am. You're going to be who you are. And we were interdependent on one another. We bring us two together and we both accomplish something. But if I'm looking at you and I'm saying, well, I need you to be this, and you said I need you to be that, the hammer can only be a hammer.
Right.
And the nail can only be a
right. Because if they're both actually arguing about what they're, you this and you that, then they're focusing on themselves and they ain't gonna accomplish anything.
Right.
They can't get anything built. They can't, because the communication is not there.
Right.
And they are actually functioning as a one person right now.
Yeah.
I'm looking out for myself.
Right.
I don't know what you're gonna do.
It's the reason I like the hammer and nail, because you think about it this way: if the hammer does his function, the nail can do his.
Right.
If the nail does their function, the hammer can do theirs. So when you go into a relationship, you have two people. Now let's use a couple, a male and a female. They can be married, they could not be married.
Right.
They go into a relationship. In order for the male to be the best male, the female needs to be the best female. But in order for the female to be the best female, the male needs to be the best male. Now, if the female is not developed fully in her femininity, or if the male is not fully developed in his masculinity, you look at it and say, let's look at the hammer and nail again. If a hammer is not, and let's make it animated. Let's say a hammer is not feeling hammerish today. He's not feeling hammerish.
I don't feel like hammer.
Yeah, I don't feel like there is nothing that the nail can do to make the hammer be a better hammer.
Right.
It can only be what? The best nail it can be. And then the hammer shouldn't look to the nail to make it feel good and say, hey, I need you to make me feel good about myself. He said, I am, because I'm being a good nail. What's the point? When a person is complete in themselves and they go into a relationship, when they're complete in themselves and they relate to someone complete in themselves, then there's so much you can accomplish. But if you go in there into a relationship and you're empty, then what you're going to do is look for the other person to fulfill you.
Right.
And if you're looking for that person to fulfill you, and that person is a female don't know how to fulfill a male. She said, but I know how to what? I know how to compliment a male and be the best female, which will enable him to function as a male, and then the two can accomplish something. So oftentimes we're not complete. And because we're not complete, then what we do is we end up pointing fingers at the other person and blaming them versus taking responsibility for myself and say, what do I need to do to get myself right so I can provide in this relationship what's necessary to make the relationship work.
Right. That's important. You said something powerful, because if the other person don't know who they are, they have to know what hurts them. They have to know how they function, how they think, and what, bringing in some self-control. If they don't know themselves very well, and one of the things that we talk about a lot is the things that has happened in their past, the things that has shaped them as a person. Those things in the past, the pain, the hurt, the frustration, all of those things that we bring into the current relationship. And if they don't know themselves well enough and know that this powerful word here, triggers, from the past, bring in a lot of the things that we experience in our past, whether it's from growing up as a child in the home, going through school, whatever hurt, frustration, whatever anxiety that you experience throughout your life, you're bringing all of those things if you didn't know how to work through them. Right. So it's important that you get to know yourself, how you get angry, how you control that anger, and how you function as an individual, to express yourself. That is so important, to get to know yourself as who you are, so that when you go into a relationship, that person don't need to validate you.
Right.
As a person, you already know who you are. You already know that you are loved if you grew up in a home that conveyed the love to you, and you know that you're loved, but you don't have to go outside looking for it. So it's important for you to do some self-reflection on who you are and know who you are.
Right.
And be the person that you are, and not looking for someone else to give you what you need when you go into a relationship.
Right. And people think, well, okay, if I'm broken in a relationship, or I'm not fully complete, I don't feel valued, I don't feel significant, I don't feel important. My identity, I have esteem issues, I have identity issues, I have all these challenges. Where am I to go to get those things? And oftentimes we think, well, you have to do that for me. But if we go to the last part of Ecclesiastes 4, it talks about, in verse 10, it talks about a threefold cord.
Right.
That threefold cord says, okay, there's a two here, but what's the third cord? The third cord has to be the one who made us.
Yes.
So if a hammer doesn't feel, it's not functioning as a hammer, it can't go to the nail. If the nail is not functioning as a nail, it can't go to the hammer. They have to go back to what? To the manufacturer who made them. As individuals, when we are not functioning right, we can't place obligations, demands, and expectations on someone else to make us better. Right. Because if I do that, if I put you in a position where you can validate me, I just gave you the power to also invalidate me. And so when you say, yes, Scott, you're great, I'm feeling good. But if you say something negative, I'm down. So then I'm riding this roller coaster. But when we go back to the manufacturer, the creator, God himself, and say, you validate me, when God validates us, he will never tear us down. Yes. He will only always build us up. Yes. So one of the things we found out in counseling is a lot of time we have to direct people who are in relationships, who are dealing with inadequacy in their life. We have to direct them back to the manufacturer and say, hey, God made you, and what you need that you're trying to get from another relationship, you have to get from him. And so that's the ultimate relationship. Even though we have the horizontal here, we still have to have that threefold cord and use that vertical relationship. That's some things that at your best, you can't provide for me.
Okay. Yes. Amen. You said that right, because that's the threefold. The third cord is what we need to consider the most in going to, because that's the relationship that we need to have from the beginning, so that when we come up with these different types of challenges in a relationship and we're expecting to get it from the person that we're in the relationship with, because God don't design us to get everything that we need from the person that we're in a relationship.
Right. Exactly.
He wants us to come back to him and say, God, I need this. I need you to fill me with this. I need you to heal me in this area where I'm feeling inadequate, where I feel like I'm not enough. I don't feel like I'm worthy. Those are the things that we need to go to God, because only God can complete you and heal you in that area. Okay.
Yeah.
So, the expectations, won't be so on that person that you're in a relationship with.
Yeah.
Whether it's friends, mother, father, sister, brother, business relationship, all of those things that, contribute and helps confine the relationship. We have to go to God and allow him to complete us in the area that we're lacking.
Yeah, and oftentimes because of past pains and hurts in relationships, and people don't oftentimes point us. A lot of time you have people, and this is a terminology we deal with a lot in psychology called codependency. A lot of time we have people who want people to need them because they say, well, if I can keep you dependent on me, then it makes me feel good to take care of you. And so a lot of time people want people depending on them because they're saying, well, hey, when they depend on me and they need me, it's almost like I become their God.
Right.
I'm the one that's here for you and you have to have me.
Right.
And so a lot of times that can cripple people when you have people whose identity has been defined by somebody needing them. And when somebody's needing them, and they use that to manipulate people and keep people where they are.
That is so true. So we're going to end our podcast right now. I think we're coming close to the end. So we truly want you to know that relationships are important. Gleam on that. Know that, number one, God is the relationship that we must consider first.
Right.
And to whatever we need, we can go to him. So we're going to end our podcast. We truly thank you for tuning in and hope that you can take something away from this podcast. And until we see you again, we'll see you next time. Thank you for tuning in.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.